Hello, and welcome to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Each week, we set the table for a discussion about recipes and stories from the authors of The Joy of Cooking, Kitchen Victories and Misadventures, and most importantly, what we are cooking and eating right now. We're glad you've joined us at the table today. I'm Shannon Larson, home cook, ardent Joy of Cooking user and fan, and chicken wing enthusiast.
I'm Megan Scott, co-author of the 2019 edition of The Joy of Cooking. I'm a food editor by day and avoider of dish duty by night, and blue cheese stuffed olives are the superior martini garnish.
I'm John Becker, fourth-generation co-author and steward of The Joy of Cooking, America's oldest family-run cookbook. And I am very impatient when it comes to making dark roux.
Wow, that's really niche.
I know.
It's kind of a tense time. I started feeling pretty nervous about it because I started with Paul Prudhomme recipes, which have you making a roux at medium high.
Yeah, that's risky business. You can do that when you're a chef.
Yeah. But, try opening a beverage that's under pressure next to, when you're trying to stir a roux. And let me tell you.
Bad times.
Thankfully, no. But it's called Cajun napalm for a reason.
Oh, yeah. The
Cajun
roux.
napalm. Ugh.
Yeah, it's hot. John did make gumbo this week.
Oh, yeah.
Which is awesome. And I feel like really unexpected for a weeknight.
Yeah.
Because it does take quite a lot of time to make the roux.
That's pretty much the longest. I mean, unless you're Paul Prudhomme and you have it cranked up to high or medium high or whatever, it's definitely the longest and most time and attention intensive part of it. The rest of it's just simmering.
Oh yeah, it's just simmering.
Yeah,
it's
just
easy.
simmering.
And BD.
Yeah, no big deal.
I do agree on those blue cheese stuffed olives.
Well, I feel like this week our friendship attained a new level because you gave me your blue cheese stuffed olive from your martini.
I did.
Which is such a nice thing.
I understand you. It's just 100% the superior martini olive.
Yes.
And when I saw, and they gave you two regular olives.
Gave me two regular.
I love olives of all kinds, but come on.
Yeah, I wanted the blue cheese one.
I got you.
John didn't order it for me correctly, so this is what happens.
I'm just secretly opposed, but it's fine.
Get out of here.
One of our first conversations when I met John was about blue cheese and how I loved blue cheese, and he also loves blue cheese. And that was very important. That was like a relationship test, one of the first. Oh, you like blue cheese? Okay, we can potentially date.
So it's okay that I potentially failed this.
You get to pass this one
I know
time.
your heart's in the right place.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'll settle for that.
What have you been up to this week, Shannon? What are you cooking?
We've been cooking a lot recently. Like I said, I think a couple episodes ago, I'm really trying to have more people over and making plans with people. It's a goal of mine this year. I'm getting older and going out is just not as fun as it used to be. I feel like I can't talk to people, and I always feel a little rushed if the restaurant's busy, and I want to support restaurants. So we order just to-go orders most of the time, but we've just been having people over. We made fresh pasta one night with asparagus and peas, very springy. I think the best thing we made recently, we got the grill out because it's beautiful in Portland right now. And we made cold soba noodles with a cucumber salad with sesame oil. And then we grilled yakitori.
Oh,
and it was so fun and so delicious. And then the night that we were feeling really lazy, John took over and we made loaded potatoes. Not baked potatoes, but almost potato skins.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
And they were so good. We paired them with a lot of vegetables to balance it out because it wasn't healthy.
Potato's a vegetable.
I mean, covered in cheese and bacon and sour cream,
Vegetable. All vegetables.
Everything counts.
I mean, all the nutrients are in the skin.
Yeah, and we leave the skins on. We never peel the skins. So
Yeah. Good call.
we're good.
For potato skins, it's kind of...
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You need that.
But it's been really fun. We've just kind of enjoyed cooking. It's lighter later. And so after work, we feel like we just have more time to put our energy into it.
Yeah, it is hard in the winter when it gets dark at 4 here.
I'm no.
It's really rough. It's
No.
it's bedtime. What are you talking about?
Exactly.
Dinner?
I know. I go to bed at 7. What are you? I have to make dinner? What? What about you two, other than gumbo?
Just a shout out to, I think it was Amethyst Ganaway, a chef from Charleston. I feel like this is a thing that she just was talking about on social media. But yeah, a big dollop of potato salad in that gumbo. Fantastic. Fantastic. You're not necessarily mixing it in unless you're like that. You just take a little bite of the potato salad and then, you have your rice and you have your nice dark brothy gumbo.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah, that was a very good move. But for me, the key is not adding any raw onion because that just ruins it.
Sure.
I did love the potato salad in the gumbo.
That was very good.
It's kind of like gravy. I mean, if you think about it, it's like mashed potatoes and gravy, kind of.
Is it?
But with gumbo instead of gravy and potato salad instead of mashed potatoes. But we had a rutabaga left from our winter CSA. Those things last
I know.
forever,
It's
which
great.
is great. But also,
And also.
what do you do with them? I know you can mash them. You can turn them into soup. You can roast them. But for some reason, none of those things, I mean, it's sunny and warm. So it's like none of those things sounded good. But John had a really good idea to treat it like there's a French potato dish called pomme de terre fondant, which just means melting potatoes.
I feel like we talked about this last time.
we might have
maybe
talked about it.
Yeah.
Like the rutabaga?
Not with the rutabaga, just
Okay.
with regular potatoes.
Yeah, but you brown you cut the potatoes into these little cylinders and you brown them and then braise them with broth and butter and herbs and things. And the broth reduces into this like thick syrupy sauce that's really good. So we just did that, but with rutabaga instead of potato.
How'd it turn
It was
out?
delicious. Yeah, it turned out great. I love the texture.
It was a disaster.
I feel like we need to mention
So-
disasters every so often because they do happen.
No,
Well,
this is a
unfortunately, this
PSA,
turned out well.
never do this.
No, good use for rutabagas. And we actually don't have a rutabaga specific recipe in the 2019 Joy. We talk about them and how you can use them, which is basically like you would use a potato or something. Maybe that's something we should add next time.
Agreed.
Also, they're sometimes called neeps, which is the cutest word I've ever heard for a vegetable.
Wait, I've never heard that. So it's either
Swedes.
neeps or rutabaga. Those are completely
Neeps,
different words.
Swedes.
Rutabaga or Swedes. They're also
Oh.
called Swedes.
Which one's your favorite?
I think neeps.
I mean, I feel like neeps, it's used in combination, like neeps and tatties. It's like rutabaga and potato
Oh.
mashed together. It's like one of those fun British things to say.
Love it.
Almost as good as rumbledy thumps, which is a cheesy, potatoey, scalliony type dish.
We're going to talk about our Joy Scouts recipe of the week. So last week's recipe was salted egg yolks, which John and I ended up not actually making the recipe of the week for, I don't know, we just got distracted and then forgot about it.
That's
And
allowed.
it takes a minute.
It does. And I have to admit, I started it too late. So they're still curing. So I have nothing to report. I'm excited. I've always wanted the excuse to make them. And I'm excited to use it on like a Caesar salad, is what I'm thinking.
That'll be delicious.
Yeah.
We did go to one of our local Asian supermarkets and bought 2 different kinds of salted egg yolks that
Oh.
you can just get them in like vacuum sealed packages and it's very convenient. So that's what we did. We totally cheated. We haven't used them yet, but they're in the fridge. So
What are you excited to use them for?
I was kind of thinking French fries.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know.
I think that'll be really good because there's the salted egg potato chips that are really popular.
I've never had one of those.
Delicious. So
feel
we're
like
thinking French
potato
fries.
chips, come on.
Yeah, I know. Everything on potato chips.
It's time for a trip to H Mart.
Yeah.
For anybody that cooked along, thank you so much. It's a really fun recipe, and there's tons of ways to use the salted egg yolks. We talked about a bunch of them last week, but basically anything fried, I think, probably like onion rings, French fries, potato chips, but also, yeah, Caesar salads or probably any salad would be delicious.
What about,
Pasta
like,
dishes.
Avocado toast. I was thinking
Yeah.
of like putting it, like making avocado toast and then putting some of that on there. Okay.
I'm sure it'd be great, like shaved over some asparagus too, like that. Like
yeah.
a classic asparagus mimosa, I think is what it's called. It's like when you rice like a hard boiled egg or chop it very finely over and then put it over asparagus. So
Yep.
it would probably be really good. In that.
springy.
All right, so this week we are doing a little something different. We're talking about Joy of Cooking history. So far, the Joy history episode of the podcast has been the most popular one. And we're going to start recording episodes periodically about different editions of Joy of Cooking or different historical topics, just to dig in a little deeper because we were trying to fit a lot into that one episode and it just was way too much. And I feel like every edition could have multiple episodes because there's a lot going on. My notes for this episode are wild, so we'll see how much we get to.
Thanks to writer, historian Ann Mendelsohn, we have a lot to work with, aside from like my dad's remembrances. But in addition to that, I feel like this edition and all of them do really mean quite a bit to us. So a lot to share besides just like the blow by blow of how they got published.
Well, it's nice because there's obviously a lot of history about the Joy, but you're from the family, so you know even more than other people might. So it's a nice way to get to know the book more.
Yeah. Sarah, would you like to read or play the question that prompted this episode?
My mom made many recipes from a Joy of Cooking cookbook. I have no idea what edition, but I want to get the one she used when I was growing up. I know there was a coconut milk cake and a split pea soup recipe. Any ideas on which edition, or would the 2019 edition do the trick?
So there are two possibilities, I think. The fresh coconut milk cake, that was added in the 1963 edition, which is what we chose to discuss. It's also in the 1975 edition. Whether or not your mother had, I mean, if you can remember the cover, if it's blue, that's a 63 edition. And if it's white with golds and a really elongated J, that is the 1975 edition.
Both of those are in the 2019 edition, but with changes.
Yeah, big changes.
Which we'll get into in a second. So any of those would be good if you want to find those specific recipes. If you're into it for more of a like nostalgia, I would say try to find a 63 edition because it's just a really special edition of the book. But if you're interested in a cookbook that you might want to use for a lot of different things, we're going to recommend the 2019 edition. We're a little biased, but as fun as the old editions are, and they're still useful in a lot of ways, our ideas about cooking have changed a lot over time. For example, back in mid-century, people used to cook vegetables for a very long time.
Yeah.
Like asparagus for 20 minutes kind of deal. So it's reliable for a lot of things, but not certain things.
And in this particular instance, you mentioned the split pea soup recipe, and in the 63 edition and the 75 edition, Marianne calls for actually soaking split peas, which is completely unnecessary. I mean, it's not quite the same as they used to prefer like completely overcooked and blown to hell vegetables. We definitely especially over the last 2 or 3 editions, have streamlined some of these processes that we call for.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And so I really wanted to talk about the coconut milk cake because it's a pretty interesting recipe. It's called Fresh Coconut Milk Cake Cockaigne. And it didn't actually become, the Cockaigne moniker wasn't added until the 70s. And this has caused a lot of confusion for Joy of Cooking fans. Like, what does it mean? It is explained in the book, but it's kind of a treasure hunt to find where it's explained. But basically, Cockaigne is the medieval peasant's dream. So imagine roasted chickens wandering the streets and the rivers flowing with wine, and you get to sleep and eat all day and the sun is always shining. It's kind of like the Big Rock Candy Mountain, but for medieval peasants. And so anything that, Marianne Rombauer Becker and her husband John named their home in Cincinnati Cockaigne after that mythical land of plenty. And then any recipe that they particularly loved or thought was really good, they just added Cockaigne to the name of the recipe. So
why is it making me teary-eyed?
I know,
so
it's
cute.
really sweet.
Yeah.
I love it.
It was a beautiful home.
Aw.
Makes me tear up too.
Yeah, it's so nice.
You got to spend your summers there, right?
Yeah. So my parents divorced when I was really, really young. And so I would spend all of the school year, the not fun time, with my mom in sunny Portland, Oregon. And then I would go summer break and some holidays, spend it with my dad at Cockaigne.
Mm-hmm.
But very wonderful place. Marion had cultivated a wildflower garden that, the few times I was there during spring break, it was just really wonderful to walk through. She definitely quite the naturalist, and that definitely comes through when you walk the property.
She was very multi-talented. She, in addition to writing a cookbook and collecting modern art and having being involved in the Cincinnati art community, she basically grew this amazing native plant garden in her yard. And she co-wrote a book called Wild Wealth, which is all about gardening and how to like landscaping and how to, have something in bloom in every season. So she was a very thoughtful and like studious person.
Sounds like somebody I wish I knew.
I know. I wish I knew her too.
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. I know you do too, John.
I definitely wish that I had known her. I feel like I do to a certain degree, thanks to this edition and the 1975 edition, and just being able to work on the book. I feel like I've gotten to know her pretty well.
You mentioned Anne Mendelsohn earlier, who is really a scholar and writer who wrote a book called Stand Facing the Stove, which is about Marion and Irma and the kind of early days of Joy of Cooking. Not even early, but like early to,
Through the 70s.
through the 70s.
Yeah.
She worked on that book for over 10 years, around 10 years. And it's really incredible that the level of detail that she gets into it does make you feel a bit like you knew them.
I love the way that you were describing Irma to me and then Marion to me. And Irma being kind of like this, throw it all to the wind, let's just put it in the book. And then, I don't know, it's just such a dichotomy, but I love that.
Yeah, Irma was definitely more of a freewheeling kind of. She wasn't formally educated. The way she grew up was in like upper middle class German St. Louis community, and at that time when she was growing up, like late 1800s, early 1900s, women of her class didn't have jobs. They didn't work. So she didn't need to get a formal education. She was educated in music and the arts and poetry and language, but not really anything practical. And she was just very much a witty, charming person. Mm-hmm. Whereas Marion was very studious and serious and methodical. And so you can really see the difference in the editions as Marion takes over from Irma. But before we get into that, because there's so much to talk about, I wanted to specifically talk about the coconut milk cake because it's a really interesting recipe. Do you have it open? You have it open.
No, I have it open to broth on the rocks, which I wanted to mention. But I will try to find it.
I wanted to read the head note because the head note is really nice. Some years ago, we gave a pet recipe to a friend who later presented us with the one which follows, best made with fresh coconut milk. She said that in her family, whenever a treasured recipe was received, they gave an equally treasured one of their own in return. We love this festive adopted child. So it's a recipe that was given by a friend of Marion and John's. And we don't really have any insight into whether they changed it or what happened with that. But it's a really interesting recipe because it does call for freshly grated coconut and fresh coconut milk. Have you ever opened a coconut before?
I have, but that's only because I grew up in Florida and my
Nice.
sister and I took it upon ourselves to chop one open one time because we were bored. So I've never used it for culinary purposes. It was just pure boredom.
How did you end up cracking it open?
Oh my God, we used so many tools. We had a hammer. I mean, we were also, I think I was 11 and she was 8. So it's not like we had a lot of muscle strength. We got it open though.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but there wasn't much milk inside of it.
Well, that's water. It's not even the milk.
Right, the water. You kind of have to blend it with
Gotcha.
water to make milk. I had to open a bunch of coconuts at my last job because in a lot of photo shoots we would want a freshly cracked coconut. So I got really good at opening them with a hammer.
Oh, okay, there we go. We were on the right path.
If you hold it so the eyes are facing you, you can kind of see there were ridges, more significant ridges going down the sides of the coconut, longitudinally. And if you then hold it in your non-dominant hand and hit it pretty firmly on those ridges, hit it on the first one, then rotate it and hit it on the second one and then rotate it and keep doing that pretty firmly, it will just crack open.
Oh.
And it gets easier the more you do it.
Now I want to try.
It's very fun.
Okay.
Just do it over a bowl to catch the water that
Noted.
is going to come out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun to crack a coconut. That said, we did change this recipe quite a bit for the 2019 edition.
Nobody's got time for that.
Yeah, that was kind of what we were thinking. It was this is a lot. Getting the fresh coconut and then processing it so that you have not only fresh coconut, like grated coconut, but also the milk is so much work.
Yeah.
And this is already a layer cake, which is already a lot of work for people. And so we switched to dried coconut and canned coconut milk since they're really readily available. I think more so now than in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, like, coconut milk in the 60s, probably a little harder to find.
And then we increased the sugar a little bit because the cake, when we tested it, was a little bit dense and dry. So a little bit of extra sugar makes it more moist. And the recipe also called for separating eggs and whipping egg whites and folding them in. We did not want... This is just like things a list of things Megan doesn't want to do.
Don't want to do this.
I do not want to whip egg whites. So we added them whole, and it's a fantastic cake. It really doesn't need the eggs to be separated. We fill the cake with lime curd.
Oh, so good.
The recipe that was in the 63 and the 75 edition is calling for currant, strawberry, or raspberry jelly. So, those are going to be like certainly more convenient, but the time that you've saved not cracking open a coconut and making your own coconut milk, you can have a little for the lime curd, I think.
Yeah. Or you could certainly use the jam or jelly between the layers if you wanted.
I feel like strawberry jam would be good.
Yeah, I think strawberry jam
Yeah.
or like a tart, like a raspberry would be
Yeah.
delicious with the coconut. So yeah, you could totally do that. And then we use whipped cream to frost the cake instead of, in the 60s and 70s, it called for seafoam icing, which is it's kind of like a meringue, a cooked meringue icing. But it's good, but it's very sweet. And again, you're separating eggs, you're whipping egg whites over a water bath with a mixer. It's just a lot going on.
Megan doesn't want to do that.
Don't want to do that.
But it only takes 7 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 7-minute icing. So we did change quite a bit. We think it's a better cake that way, but you can be the judge and pick up a 63 edition if you want. They're often available at like estate sales and used bookstores, and it's really recognizable because of the blue cover.
It is such a beautiful book just to have on your bookshelf. I think it's or in your kitchen. It is so pretty.
I wanted to segue into talking specifically about just this edition and what makes it special and unique and interesting. The first thing I'll say is that this is the first edition that Marion Rombauer Becker, so Irma's daughter, was in charge. Irma was still alive when Marion was working on this edition, but she had a series of strokes that made her unable to work on the book, even though I think, according to Ann Mendelsohn, she very much wanted to still be a part of the process because it was her, it was her baby. And she had really stewarded it through a lot of difficult times. But this was a transitional time when Marion took over the revision. And you can really see the change from the 1950s edition to the 1960s. Because again, Irma was sort of like, I like this recipe, let's throw it in.
Yeah.
Or somebody mailed this recipe to me, let's throw it in. To Marion, who really wanted to make Joy of Cooking an encyclopedic book that had everything in it and that would actually teach people how to cook, like the hows and the whys, not just here's a recipe, follow it, but how do you measure flour? How do you measure ingredients? She devoted 5 to 10 pages just on how to measure things, which is totally new for Joy of Cooking.
Totally, yeah.
And also reflects kind of a change in home cooks from folks of Irma's generation who had a certain amount of just general know-how around how to cook things. But in the mid-century, it wasn't as common to just have that knowledge. So you needed a little more guidance.
Well, yeah, I'm sure that there was the amount of knowledge that you could assume is maybe a little different, but I feel like it's just more indicative of Marion's thoroughness and Irma's lack of thoroughness than anything else. I mean, revision doesn't even really capture what Marion did. I mean, a lot of people were upset with how she changed the book because, for the first time, a large number of recipes were taken out in order to make room for hundreds and hundreds of new recipes. The entire organization changed. She devoted 3 chapters to just talking about ingredients, techniques, and nutrition. Nutrition was definitely one of her hobby horses, I guess you could call it. But yeah, it really is the transition between Irma's quote unquote little book, which ended up becoming very large, of recipes that were just things that she liked, to something where, more systematic, I guess.
I was reading a part of it, and she actually gets into like, what are calories or what is fat. I loved that section because it was just really interesting to read her point of view on that.
Yeah, she was very interested in nutrition, and a lot of the ideas that she had about it, well, things have changed, let's just say, over the years, but it is really cool to look back at those sections in the older books. And, Joy of Cooking has had a nutrition section since Marion took over.
Well, and before that, there were, like, in some of Irma's editions, there were, like, calorie charts.
Right.
But
for common foods.
Yeah, just like page upon page of charts, like shoved into the back for whoever might care.
I wanted to read a quick excerpt from Stand Facing the Stove about how Marion had to cut old material to make room for the new stuff. It's just really... it's really interesting. It says, she had decided early on that large amounts of material would have to be cut from the old book. It was a step for which thousands of readers never forgave her, but one would be hard put to think of anyone better qualified to face the inevitable reviser's dilemma, to retain talismans for which an older cadre felt a proprietary loyalty, or to make room for the interests of younger cooks, convinced that their preferences were timeless. Marion did not solve the problem with seamless grace. Still, it is difficult to imagine any other person doing half so good a job. So she was trying to marry the expectations of readers who were already fans of Joy with new cooks who maybe needed something different from the book, which is still something that we think about all the time.
I'm like, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
That has been the dynamic ever since.
Forever. Yeah, seemingly forever.
60 years and change.
But I do take some, I guess, I don't know if solace is the right word, sort of, but I do take some solace from the fact that Marion believed that the book needed to be a living document for home cooks and not get stuck in this old way of thinking about food and cooking. I think as we were approaching the 2019 revision, we were very cautious about cutting things because we didn't want to take away anyone's favorite recipe, but we had to think about, we got to make room for all this stuff that we think is important. So how do we make those choices? And some of the choices were hard, and maybe we didn't always make the right decision. But I think seeing Marion's example of how she handled it made us feel like, okay, we are empowered to make some of these choices,
right?
But we are always thinking about the reader.
Well, and I love the idea of the Joy of Cooking being you can look back and see how people were living in a certain era too. It's super cool to think of it that way, because if you pick up the 63 version, that's the year my mom was born. And I'm like, okay, so this is the world she was being brought into, right? I don't know. I think that's really beautiful.
At least the world that she was brought into, as, Marion might have seen it.
Marion's world.
It's... Yeah.
I mean, we're a Joy of Cooking family. My mom has a 75 version still of my grandmother's on her shelf. So that was her world. I mean, that was the cooking that she was eating. So it's kind of beautiful that way.
Yeah. It's really lovely to hear those stories too, because it's a book that kind of connects multiple generations of a family, because people remember their mom's version or their grandmother's version. And a lot of people have passed down versions that they inherit. It does feel like you're sort of connected to this greater community of home cooks, and you all have sort of the same reference point of the Joy of Cooking, which is kind of gives me chills, kind of makes me want to cry a little,
totally.
really all sweet. The feelings.
Yeah.
But yeah, this edition is also really interesting because it came at a kind of a crossroads, I guess, for the family as Irma was passing away and Marion was starting to take over. There was a lot going on at the time. So Marion had been diagnosed with cancer years earlier, but she was working on this edition as she was going through a lot of treatments.
And also, visiting her mother and taking care of her as well.
Absolutely.
So, very busy time for her.
Very busy time. But according to Ann Mendelsohn, she met every challenge with just a kind of wild energy and just refused to be laid low by all of these things. Probably to some degree, not super healthfully, but I think it probably helped her cope with what she was experiencing.
Yeah, according to my dad, Ethan, she always had a smile on her face, and she really hid the the treatments back then were painful. She had a double mastectomy, and that was pain. That caused a lot of complications. It does seem like maybe not the most healthy thing to hide what you're going through, but she managed to turn all of that into an amazingly productive effort.
Yeah. At one point, she was dealing with one of the side effects from her treatment was that her right arm was very swollen, and she had to keep it elevated. And so even when she was going through that, she could write backwards with her left hand so that you'd have to read it in a mirror. And she just continued working on the book, writing backwards with her non-dominant hand, which is something that I can't really wrap my mind around it.
I'm just trying to even picture how that works, and it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I guess that she would use very thin paper so that people could just turn it over and read it
through.
But yeah, I guess it's just like a skill that she learned from being either ambidextrous or left-handed, but being forced to use her right hand during elementary school. Pretty crazy to think about.
You're a lefty too.
That's true.
But you can't write backwards, or at least I haven't.
No, I have no fun
seen
tricks.
that skill yet.
No fun tricks.
Another thing I wanted to bring up was that Marian, I think in a lot of ways she had an artist's brain. So she had some unique ways of organizing her work. One of which was that she, to do the 1963 edition, she actually organized the entire book on index cards. She had someone cut out everything from the previous edition, paste it on index cards, and then she would create new index cards wherever she wanted to add material or add a recipe or something. And then it was all organized that way.
It's like breaking my brain right now.
I know.
Well, and then she actually tried to turn in the manuscript like that.
Yeah, she was going to turn that in as if it were the manuscript. The publisher ended up hiring someone to transcribe everything or to type everything out. This is all wild. It's hard to think. It's hard to imagine a time before computers,
right?
When you couldn't just have something there weren't copiers back then. You couldn't just copy things. You couldn't just print things in your home. You couldn't email anything. It was just everything was done on paper. And so she had these index cards. The publisher hired this person to transcribe everything, who ended up introducing a lot of errors into the text. And then they would mail the pages to Marian to proofread, and she would find the errors, correct them. But a lot of the time they didn't actually get corrected in the final copy. So a lot of just mishaps happened during this edition. And kind of the wildest thing that happened was that the publisher actually printed the 1960, it was 1962 at the time, or 1961?
1962.
62?
Yeah.
The publisher went to press with the book without Marian's knowledge or consent. She hadn't sent them the final manuscript, but they printed it anyway. And she found out about it because on the day of her mother's funeral, one of the guests said, "Hey, I just saw your book in the store. Congratulations." And she was like, "What are you talking about? It's not done." But the publisher had printed it anyway without a contract. They didn't even have a contract to print that edition, and they did it.
Yeah, which is just wild to think about, because every prior edition of Joy had been written and that basically on spec. And the contract was done when the contract was signed when the manuscript was turned in, which is just wild to think about.
Is so backwards.
I have no idea how that came about or why they kept it the same. Did they know that there was another way? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if that was typical at the time for cookbooks in general, or that was just some weird. The Joy of Cooking has a really weird and quirky publishing history that's unlike most other books.
I feel like that could be a separate 3-episode arc.
Yeah, a publishing drama. But yeah, so in the end, the president of the publishing company resigned over it, and the publisher agreed to print all of Marian's corrections to the edition. She was horrified that it was out in public because it had so many errors in it.
And the timing of it is just
The timing
awful.
is just awful. Ugh. I know. I can't imagine what that must have felt like.
Awful.
Yeah, awful.
But for years afterwards, she would, anytime she encountered a 1962 edition, like the apocryphal one, she would offer to buy it if it was at a store, or offer to replace it if she saw it on somebody's shelf. She was very, very adamant about like getting rid of that.
Yeah, which I understand, having co-authored an edition. Like, I understand that feeling of like, even, there's no way to write a cookbook without making some mistakes. But every time we've found even a little mistake, we're both like, I can't believe we let that get through. It's only an 1,100-page book.
Yeah. You didn't look at it closely enough. Sorry, guys.
Obviously.
So I understand something of what she must felt, but obviously, like, that was just an exceptional situation. Yeah. But in spite of that, with Marianne's revisions, it's just a really beautiful edition. The illustrations are really lovely.
I love the illustrations so much that I'm like, Megan, do you want to get one of them tattooed together?
I do. Okay. I really do.
The one with the lobster. The lobster one.
Jenny Hoffman was the illustrator. She did a wonderful job. We always refer to there's like a lot of process shots showing like, ingredients being manipulated or lobsters being,
handled.
Yeah. Refer to them as Jetson's hands. They're just kind of to give you an idea of, or maybe that's just like an outdated reference.
I don't think it's, when I was showing my husband the illustration, specifically the lobster one, he's like, those are like sexy hands.
Yeah. They're very like delicate looking hands. Yeah. Very, very Jetsons-y. But they're super charming. And yeah, the lobster.
You're on the page with the lamb cake.
Yeah, the lamb cake. Oh my gosh, its face, John. Look at its face.
It's the book itself is beautiful and the illustrations are beautiful. It's just worth, if you ever see it. Again, I think I've seen them at estate sales or antique malls, for example. Like, just get a copy. It's really pretty.
Just wanted to make a quick request for anybody to send Joy of Cooking tattoos to the hotline. I would love to see them. Please send them to us.
Yes, please do.
I actually did see some recent tattoos on, I think, Instagram that were pretty fantastic.
Well, we do know a friend of a friend who got the squirrel, the infamous squirrel tattooed on their body, which is a choice. But I respect it.
I like it.
I respect it.
Yeah.
Cooking with matcha? It all starts with the right tea. And that's where you need to pick Mizuba Tea Co., sourced directly from heritage tea farms in Japan. Mizuba's matcha is crafted by award-winning farms in Yuji, Japan. Vibrant, umami-rich, and stone-milled per traditional methods. It's the top quality ingredient for lattes, desserts, and even savory dishes. Not to mention whisking on its own as a ceremonial-style matcha. Whether you're making a matcha cheesecake or dreaming of a spring matcha tiramisu, start with the best. Taste the tradition. Shop at mizubatea.com. That's mizubatea.com. And use the code JOYOFMATCHA, that's JOYOFMATCHA, for 15% off your first order.
Marianne, like I said, added hundreds of new recipes, many of them from global food cultures. There was definitely a big influx of French recipes. So there's, cassoulet, salade niçoise, Italian specialties like ossobuco and frittata, as well as, couscous, dolmas, hummus, a lot of different stuff being added. She was really, really trying to bring it as up to date as she possibly could. And then, of course, there's also a bunch of new kind of, I guess you could call them DIY recipes. So, there's this whole chapter called Know Your Ingredients. And in that chapter, not only does she discuss the properties of different ingredients, but she's also talking about how to make them. So there's recipes for how to make cheese. There's recipes for how to make soy milk. I don't think the tofu recipe made it into the 63. I feel like that was added in 1975.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she really tried to be a completist with this edition. And she was inspired by the Larousse Gastronomique, and she wanted The Joy of Cooking to be like the American version of the Larousse Gastronomique, which is an old French, it's not really a cookbook. It's more of a reference. It does have some recipes in it, but kind of a glossary of everything French cooking. And she wanted Joy of Cooking to be like that.
And that's how I talk about the Joy now is like, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a cookbook with a ton of recipes, but it's also an encyclopedia on how to cook and how to use ingredients and so much more. So I think she kind of paved the way for how most of us think of the Joy.
Yeah, certainly now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not to quote Ann Mendelsohn again, but she really did have a really nice way of summing it up. As Marianne included, quote, knowledge that made the difference between walking through a formulaic script and applying real judgment.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Mm-hmm.
She sounds like a cool person, Mary.
Yeah, she really does.
Yeah.
She was also interested in like modern dance and modern art. And I don't know, just everything about her just sounds lovely. And she was a really good letter writer. We have some of her letters. But yeah, wish we had met Marian.
Yeah. The dedication for this edition was kind of indirectly what, I mean, it's definitely what inspired me to start working on the book.
Can you read it?
Yeah, I can read it. So she's talking about her husband, John. John has always contributed verve to this undertaking, but during the past 10 years, he has, through his constant support and crisp creative editing, become an integral part of the book. We look forward to a time when our two boys and their wives will continue to keep the Joy a family affair, as well as an enterprise in which the authors owe no obligation to anyone but themselves and you being the readers. I encountered that particular passage at a really dark and kind of indecisive point in my life. And for the first time, I felt like I had a connection with Marian. And I actually felt like I was kind of, being addressed by her.
Yeah, she kind of puts you on the spot in that.
Well, and it doesn't help that her husband, who she's just finished talking about, is also named John. But, I really took it to heart. Mm-hmm. And that combined with like the epigraph that she gives.
It's the best.
I'm actually really obsessed with this epigraph for some reason.
Yeah.
Can you please read it?
Yeah, sure. It's a quote from Faust by Goethe. That which thy fathers bequeathed to thee, earn it anew if thou wouldst possess it.
Damn, mic drop.
I know. It just feels like such a cool way to start a cookbook. Like, it's just cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it comes right after the dedication, and it's definitely like, I put a spell on you. I don't know.
You must continue the legacy of Joy of Cooking and do a really good job.
Yeah. And I'm obliged to myself.
Yeah.
And everyone who ever reads the book.
No pressure.
Yeah, no.
Fine. You said it made you feel connected to Marianne in a way you never had felt before. And then it kind of changed the trajectory of what you ended up doing.
I had this deep sense of being beholden to Marianne and to the book, to her sense of purpose.
A lot about what you've told me about her reminds me of you, like specifically, which is really special as well.
Well, thank you. That's a very nice compliment.
You could grow better wildflowers, though. I'm just joking. Your yard's beautiful.
Working on it, okay?
I'm kidding.
She's definitely like taken a lot of inspiration from her, and the fact that she was able to put together this edition, suffering during cancer treatment, is very inspiring. And we're coming up on my 5-year anniversary of getting diagnosed with cancer. Which actually, I was diagnosed right after we finished the 2019 edition. Looking forward, I just know how difficult that must have been. I mean, everybody's experience with cancer and cancer treatment is different, but from what it sounds like, she was going through some horrendous times. I just don't know how she managed to do it. After I was diagnosed, after surgery, when I was still getting chemo, I remember Roz Lapel from Scribner was in touch.
And Roz was not our editor, but sort of the closest contact we had as a publisher at the time when we were working on the 2019 edition.
Yeah, she was shepherding us through the last part of the revision process. And, after surgery, she was like, oh, you guys should start working on a new project. And, I'm getting, chemo infusions every 2 weeks.
And this was during COVID. This
And
was
during
in
COVID.
2020.
Right.
So
Happened right as COVID hit, right after you finished the book tour.
yeah.
Yeah. We were in deep lockdown time by the time Roz was getting in touch about working on a new project. And it's just like, yes, I would love to do that. And then my resolve and like any kind of enthusiasm I had for it would wane with like the next infusion.
Neither of us had time to even wrap our heads around the 2019 edition that we had just come out with, because I think it was such a whirlwind of, we were on deadline for like 3 years, getting different parts of the book done. And then it was finally done. And we launched straight into publicity, which was its own wild whirlwind of activity.
I barely remember any of it.
No, I do too. I remember very little. And then 2020 happened and COVID happened. And then you were diagnosed. And it was just like, everything needs to stop. I can't think about another project right now. I don't have the spoons for that.
Yeah, it was definitely thinking about Marianne's example and how she was able to produce like an entire manuscript during the aftermath of being diagnosed and going through treatment. That, it made me, sadly, I got to know her even better. Mm-hmm. And also it just makes me respect her so much more.
Mm-hmm. I think it's also okay to not white knuckle your way through cancer treatment and try to do everything.
Well, yeah, when we were preparing for this episode, I couldn't even imagine like trying to hide.
Yeah, trying to hide a diagnosis like that from even your family.
Yeah.
Hard to think about. I'm glad there's not as much. I don't know. She must have felt some stigma in talking about it, or just that she maybe didn't want to be viewed differently. And I am glad some of that stigma has fallen away.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
I don't know how to segue out of that.
Yeah, no, it's a tough one.
But I did want to announce this week's Joy Scouts recipe. We're just going to do the coconut milk cake cockaigne because we talked about it so much today. It's on page 724 of the 2019 edition. If you have the old version, you're welcome to try your hand at fresh coconut.
I kind of want somebody to try the old
know.
because I want to, and like take video of the steps. Yeah.
But yeah, let us know what you think of the recipe. Please post it on social media. If you decide to make it, you can tag us at The Joy of Cooking on Instagram or use the hashtag Joy Scouts. And if you have a topic, ingredient, or joy story to share, call our hotline at 503-395-8858. Leave us a message or send us a text. We'd love to hear from you. Next week's topic comes from our caller.
I want to make my own pasta. Do I need a pasta machine to roll it out? I'm hesitant on purchasing kitchen gear before starting a new hobby.
Understandable. Yeah, we'll get into that next week. Making fresh pasta is delightful. John makes it for us. For some reason, you're really good at making fresh pasta.
That's because I have a pasta roller.
But that's not the answer to the question.
Also, he did buy a garlic press, so
Yes, John did buy a garlic
Talking about
press.
kitchen appliance stuff.
Yeah. No, I followed through. I bought a garlic press.
You bought two garlic.
I bought two. I actually found the one with gigantic holes that I remember from back in the day, and it still hasn't gotten here, which, fine. But yeah, I got a newfangled one that I don't know.
All the things.
It cleans itself. It ejects the it's pretty
Garlic skin.
the garlic skin. It's pretty fancy. I've only used it once. Definitely did a good job. Didn't have to peel the garlic. Some I feel like some models are, they advertise that you don't have to peel the garlic before you press it. I don't think this one specifically said that, but I just tried it anyway, and thankfully it worked.
Oh yeah, it definitely works for that. Yeah. No, I'm actually coming around on the garlic press. I think
I'm waiting till you get the second one, and then I want you to report back to me which one I should buy.
Okay.
Well, here's the boss move, which is so if you go to H Mart, you can buy like a pint or a quart container
all that peeled garlic.
full of peeled garlic.
Yeah.
No.
Then you put it in a food processor and you chop it all up. You mince it in the food processor. Then you put it in a Ziploc, flatten it really flat, and then make indentations and then freeze it. And then you can just break off pieces every time you need it instead of fooling with garlic. And then you don't have to use jarlic, which we don't talk about that here.
Jarlic's fine.
It's fine.
Don't yuck any yums now.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Meg.
Before we wrap, what is everybody thinking about cooking this week?
I'm hosting a West Coast family hang at my house. My uncle is coming up from San Diego with his partner. My cousin's coming up with his wife from San Francisco. My sister's coming down from Seattle. We're going to hang, and I'm going to do 2 of Samin's buttermilk chickens because roasting a chicken is my new thing when you have company. It's just the easiest. And then I think I'm going to do like the celery and date salad. And I found this recipe for a white bean salad with anchovy vinaigrette that I want to put together. So it's just going to be a bunch of like things that can sit on the table pretty easily. And then roasted chicken so that I can actually hang out with my family. And I'm really excited.
Food you can serve at room temperature is the best.
Yes. And I'm really trying to like make it like I always put too much pressure on myself. And I'm trying to lower that. It's all going to be handmade and everything. But I can do some of this stuff the day before and like less pressure.
Yeah. Have fun. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. They're a bunch of weirdos. So I'm super excited. My family's eccentric.
That. Yeah. We don't know anything about that.
No, nothing. What about you two?
Well, I've been kind of on a kick of eating the same thing for lunch every day, and I love it so much. So in Portland, there's this little chain of, they're not really restaurants. They're like little windows that you go order food from, but it's called Whole Bowl. And it's just like brown rice, black beans, black olives from the can.
Which we're fans of.
Very big fan. Salsa, avocado, sour cream, cheese, and then this sauce that they put on it that's called Tolly sauce. And I found a copycat recipe online that is made with like, has a lot of nutritional yeast, which is delicious, and like chickpeas that you blend up and it gives it kind of a creamy texture. And then lots of like, garlic powder, onion powder, turmeric, stuff like that. But I've been eating it every day for lunch and I am not done yet. I love it.
I need to do that. John, any plans for you? Are you making any feast this week, like gumbo?
Just random grilling.
Nice.
Yeah. The gumbo was actually, it was not premeditated. So hopefully like there will be some other things like that, don't involve, burns.
Oh, no.
Thanks for listening to the Joy of Cooking podcast. Before we go, show some love for your favorite podcast by subscribing to the show and leaving us a review. Follow us at joyofcooking.substack.com and on Instagram at thejoyofcooking. Stay tuned for next week, where we will tackle making fresh pasta. And don't forget to make this week's recipe, coconut milk cake cockaigne, on page 724. Call in with questions, hopes, history, or where you find joy in the kitchen. Our number is 503-395-8858. That's 503-395-8858.
And we could not do this without our fantastic team at the Joy of Creation production house. Thank you to Dave Drusky, our production coordinator, Haley Bowers, our audio engineer, and Sarah Marshall, our producer.